Okay, everyone. A very good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us. I think it's a really special occasion today. We have Ramesh Iyer, who's the CFO of APAR Industries, who's joining us. Ramesh has been a leader in the finance space and a champion of automation in general. And we thought it would be really insightful to hear from him on AP automation, on payments, on finance automation overall. He's worked with Godrej Consumer Products for about 20 years before he moved to Nitco, and today he's with APAR Industries. APAR Industries is a $1 billion plus revenue company on an annual basis. And Ramesh handles the entire finance function there. Welcome, Ramesh. We also have Ankur with us, who's the CEO of CashFlo. And before CashFlo, Ankur was with the Boston Consulting Group. CashFlo itself is an AP automation and payment suite and is positively impacting large businesses in India. Ankur's been leading that entire charge, and he's joining us as well. I'm going to hand over to both Ankur and Ramesh here. Ankur, do you want to take it away?
Hey, thanks, Akshay. Hi, Ramesh. How are you?
Hi, Ankur. I'm fine. How are you?
All well. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thanks everyone for joining in. Super exciting agenda today. Welcome to all the guests who've taken time out to join today's webinar. I wanted to use this opportunity to, sort of discuss with Ramesh on how he thinks about automation in the finance function. Ramesh has been one of the sort of forces in finance to really take charge on automation and think about digitizing the function, and would love to sort of leverage his insights and his point of view on how finance leaders in India should think about automation in general. So Ramesh, super excited to have you on board. Thank you for taking out time.
Pleasure for me, sir.
So let's dive right in, right? We have about 45 minutes or so. We thought we can cover a few areas. One, starting with understanding, Ramesh, how do you think about technology in finance? What's your sort of philosophy behind it? Especially for companies in India who traditionally have lagged Western counterparts when it comes to digitization. Would love to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, sure, Ankur, and thanks for having me in this webinar. We are living in a technological era. That's true, and everyone knows about it. And I would say that we are actually fortunate to be in this era where innovation and technology is rampant across sectors and services. To take any particular area, any area where you see innovation and technology is at the core. Today manufacturing is looking at digitization. We're talking about things like Industry 4.0. We're talking about usage of AI, ML, which is higher than ever before. Imagine when you used to hear about these things a decade or 2 decades earlier. And now everyone is just talking about these initiatives. We see several uses of robots in various services, sectors, simplifying the work, simplifying the processes involved. So, in this era, I would feel that technology and innovation is no longer a luxury. It's actually a necessity. It's something you can't live without it. It's actually inevitable. And if you look at processes within finance, adoption of such technology, such innovative solutions is relatively easier than some of the complicated areas that we talk about manufacturing. So a lot of functions in finances are back-end. There are some front-end, and there is immense utilization of technology in finance. And if you look at the roles of finance, it has actually evolved over the last 2 decades. It's no longer your traditional accounting reporting. It's more about business partnering. It's more about risk management, technology, and so on and so forth. However, the responsibility of finance in the area of traditional finance continues. You can't say that no, though my role has evolved, I won't look at the traditional part of the thing that I should do. So, to give a simple example, if there is a wrong payment done, it's the finance people that you're going to catch. You're not going to catch the person who is the service function there. So whereas your expectations has increased a lot over the last 2 decades, the responsibility continues to be traditional finance as well as the modern day finance. So the key question is, how do we balance both? On the one hand, you are expected to do something else, and on the other hand, there are core things that strikes you at the back of your mind, and in some cases, you end up having sleepless nights over what's happening in that processes. So that's where technology gives us the answer, wherein you can digitize your functions and processes, identify areas that can be automated, and several areas. Finance looks at back-end functions, it looks at the front-end functions, it looks at transactions, reportings, analytics, and etc. in so many areas. What are the things that you can identify, you can automate, you can digitize to make things simpler for you, and digitize in a manner that there is no room for error. You can go have a peaceful sleep in the night, thinking that all your transactions, everything is automated. There's no need to worry about any manual processes and so on. And as I said, we are living in this technological era. We are fortunate that there are so many tools and technologies available, and to address these solutions. And thanks to entrepreneurs like you, Ankur, we are able to get so much of these solutions which can actually address these areas and enabling us to protect our responsibilities in a more digital environment.
Yeah.
It's actually the time we need to have technology in our DNA. That's where I would like to put it. It's no longer a choice. It's an inevitable thing, and it's something that everybody needs to imbibe in our DNA.
Yeah. Now that's very interesting. I like the articulation of how responsibilities have increased, but the core jobs don't go away, right? So how do you take care of both? That's an interesting sort of thought, for people to think about. One other question that finance teams often grapple with is what does technology mean for their day-to-day life? Oftentimes it's considered, is it a risk to their day-to-day jobs, for instance, right? And what would love to get your perspective on this. There is if you look at the financial services sector, they actually are at the forefront of adopting technology, right, and innovations in technology. But corporate finance historically has lagged a bit. One of the fears we have heard, or one of the considerations we've heard is, what does it do to our team? Is there a risk, to their jobs? How should companies be thinking about that?
So I see this, digitizations in finance processes are actually enablers for the functions to gear up to the next level. What happens typically in organization is that as the organization grow, people are immune to the way they do things, and there is often resistance to change. Though you pick up any employee, he would love to do things beyond what he is doing currently, but because he has been doing things in a particular way, he doesn't want to leave the core. Though he has aspirations to do things and do job rotations, do things in a better way, but he just doesn't want to leave the core. And when they see these kind of solutions, practically that we've seen in APAR, when they see these situations and how simple the task can be, they would like to do that. That's where we have experienced that. Once they see that the visible success, we have been spending so much hours in these mundane tasks, and this is where the solution is able to help you, and that's what enables you to perform better, go to the next level, do that rotation that is asked for, do something that you want to do, rather than sticking to the one that you've been doing the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and so on. So I put it this way that these techniques are more as enablers for us. It's no longer a cost reduction initiative. We don't even look at technology as a cost reduction initiative. Gone are those days which used to be 2 decades old, where these costs used to look as in a different angle. Today, it looks more as from an analytics point of view, and with this foundation that we have, what are the more things that we can build on, like AI or ML that you talked about, are all the platforms that you can build onto the base structure that we have.
It's actually, in a way, similar to how some of the other functions have leveraged technology, right? So when you think about sales, CRM is today, indispensable, right?
Exactly.
Function. Similarly, in HR, HRMS, is indispensable, and some of the SaaS solutions have really transformed how HR as a function delivers value. I think in many ways there are parallels here I can see with the finance function as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. No, so that's true. I think it's just that people need to embrace technology. I'll put it that way. It's no longer a choice. It's just that people have to see the benefits there, and when people visualize that, you're able to just embrace it.
Yeah. Ramesh, moving on, would love to understand, in context of APAR, when you took over as a finance leader there, what were some of your focus areas when it came to digitization of finance? How did you think about that digital agenda?
Yes, so APAR, APAR Industries is a 6-decade-old company. We have 3 divisions there, and when I took over APAR, I was fortunate to have a team who knows things very well. They're a very experienced team who been there for a long time. They know things. They have this tenure and experience, and that's something I was fortunate to be part of this leading this team. The only thing I noted is that there has been a lot of advancement in systems and processes and technologies. That something was a potential for me to implement in APAR. And now I'm currently driving 5 big automation projects exclusively in finance and reporting at APAR, ranging from transactions to dashboards to reporting to collection processes to payment processes like the one we are doing with CashFlo currently. So these are the projects that I've been leading, and we feel that there's opportunities available because, as I said, as the company grows, some of the routine things that we do, we don't revisit that thing. So the message that I normally give to my team is on continuous improvement, which means that as we look at our processes and systems, we always find room for improvement. It's not that what you've done in the past is wrong or incorrect or so, but with this changes and rapid development that is happening in technological space, there is a solution for every kind of problem that we face. And as these technological solutions expand, it's always good to revisit the way you're doing things, even though you automated some solution 2 years before. When you sit down and see, there is always room for improvement. So that has been my mantra after joining APAR here, that teams look at for continuous improvement in every area that you did, and definitely you'll find some of the other solutions that is available in the market where we can tap to improve our efficiencies.
Yeah, I love it. Continuous improvement or Kaizen, right? It's a great mantra to actually embrace. And it requires a leader at the top to be able to change that mindset of the teams as well. So I think it's commendable because for an organization of this size to be able to and with the 6-decade plus legacy, to be able to embrace technology, I'm sure would not have been easy, right? So very interesting. And Ramesh, where do you see, when it comes to digitization, right? Oftentimes, again, we've heard leaders talk about multiple priorities in the finance function, even with regards to digitization, there are multiple areas, right? How do you think about digitization in, let's say, accounts payables as a function versus some of the other areas within finance? And how should leaders be thinking about it?
Yeah, so I think I would distinguish things like accounts payable as compared to some of the other digitization things that we are currently running, in the way that a lot of I would bucket into two things. One is, everything relating to your transactions, your processes, your systems, your reporting, your dashboards, and so on, and something that involves money. And when you look at EP, the key thing is that it involves outflow of money. So that gets into a very different, radar itself. So is there, and you always have think about whether there is a risk of double payment happening, there is an overpayment happening, is some wrong bank account being used, or is somebody changing something in the background and processing. So that's always the back of your mind. So EP was always a critical thing for us because it purely involves outflow of money, and the controls there has to be much more than some of the other areas that we look. Of course, in terms of reporting and dashboard, if there is here and there delay, it doesn't matter. But in case of EP, even if there is a single amount of double payments or changes happening, it actually then pushes your antenna to see that all the controls are there or not. So from that point of view, EP was critical, and we really wanted to build something very critical. And if you look at the various solutions also that is available on EP, the one that we picked up was on the payment fee. And then once this security is maintained, then you can look at other areas within EP so that the entire system is fully integrated.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And oftentimes, when it comes to AP process, right? Finance teams typically are grappling with the idea that, we already have an ERP, right? That should take care of all our AP processes. Do we really need? Are there any gaps still remaining to be solved, which ERPs are not solving? So, when you think about APAR and some of and you obviously are using the best-in-class ERP in the market. So how what were some of the challenges in the AP process that you were facing despite having a solid ERP implemented at APAR?
Yeah, so I think the key challenges that we had is, we had a lot of manual interventions. As I said, we are a 6-decade-old company, and our size is about, we had a turnover of 14,000 crore in the recently concluded financial year. And 3 divisions are there, decentralized operations are there, more people involved into the payment processes. We have a central treasury team that does the payment. The business teams are different. So there's a lot of pockets of manual interventions are there, and as the more manual interventions are there, the more the chances of errors are there. Though we have an experienced team, we have experienced people in the system who knows processes and knows all the stuff, checkings and those things that happen. But whenever there is a human involvement, you always think that there could be a possibility of errors. So that was some of the challenges that we wanted to mitigate. And the time that people spend on manual process was also too much. Like it goes from the business, it goes to the treasury team, and then there's a fund allocation happening, and then goes back to the business team, and then the processing happens, and then the payment advisors are then manually, and then it goes back to the system, and people again post entries. So the entire chain is that people just take too much time involved, is just increasing, and it's not that you do this once once or twice a month. It actually happens on a daily basis with so many vendors, so many payments involved. It happens on a daily basis, and there's people get immune to do those same mundane tasks on a daily basis. That's where what the key challenges. And secondly, if you see, the laws are also changing. It's not no longer within APAR, but some of the laws like GST requirements are getting stricter, that you need to check 1, 2, 3 things before the payment is done. You lose some of the input credit mechanism. So the regulatory focus is also getting stricter, and in such a way it's very difficult that you keep to continue to have manual interventions every time to check whether it falls within the boundary of the requirements. And that's where the key challenges were there. We identified, and that's where it all boiled down that no longer that now we need to have a solution in place to address these key challenges.
I want to just, tug on that thought a little more, right? And, sort of playing devil's advocate a little bit. You talked about how the manual processes with payments and even checking GST prior to payments was not optimized. But like companies are doing it today as well, right? They're handling it in a certain way. They're handling it in manual terms, manual process. Um, and so what if it is, not optimized, right? Like, does it really, matter? And what is your sort of take on that?
Yeah, so I think whenever this regulatory framework changes, I think people do have their own systems and processes where they are able to do achieve that objective. It is that because whenever you have an experienced people in the system, you will always have solutions on manual areas that people like to download some things and people like to check these things and it will happen. But the thing is that how long you want to do this, and and things like GST will keep on evolving. Like there were some regulations last year, something happened this year, something may happen next year. There is no end to that. And it's just that you can't keep on doing the manual thing forever. It's just going to cost you time, efforts, and it's not going to achieve anything. And what happens also in the process is that if there is such a big company, if there is some loss of credit for some small amounts, it may even get unnoticed. It is very difficult that to track each and everything manually, and you don't want to spend time to see whether you have got all the credits in the manual process or not. Whereas you want a watertight system to ensure that there is absolutely no room for error. So that we don't even lose any amount of money and resources beyond even verifying whether we've got all the credits.
Oh, that's interesting. So what you're saying is it's not just about productivity improvement from automating process. There is actually a risk of loss and bottom line impact that that can happen if some of these processes are not tightly managed. And GST in particular, with changing regulations. In fact, we've heard this across some of our other customers as well, is that GST reconciliation up until now was all post facto, right? After making the payments on a monthly basis, quarterly basis. But that's a big risk to take, because if vendors haven't filed GST and you made their payment, then it actually exposes the company to potential losses, right? And you need to then chase your vendors to get them to pay. So at scale, actually, being proactive, and managing some of these things prior to payment becomes even more critical. So that's interesting. I think there was a hand raised. We'll probably come to questions in a bit. Ramesh, just when you think about AP, right, and you talked about how AP as a function needs to be looked at differently compared to any other areas within finance. Talk a little bit about when you think about AP. Most of the solutions in the market, are mostly around OCR and, picking up and scanning invoices. What's your take on digitization within AP? And what's been your experience when you've sort of looked at AP solutions in the market?
Yes, so we did evaluate quite a few vendors before we finally boiled down to CashFlo last year. And we found that most solutions were restricted to only one area of solution, which is largely the OCR technology. But when we went to CashFlo, we found that it's a completely integrated AP platform that we have. It not only talks about your invoice booking, it also talks about the payments. It also talks about the payment advice is being done and then flowing back the entries to our ERP, and also knocking off your vendor from the ERP. So once the payment is done, it does an end-to-end entry of knocking off your vendor from the system. And the key thing is that we found that CashFlo has a solution which is bank agnostic. A lot of solution that we saw in the market was specific to one bank. Here, it doesn't actually matter which bank you cover, as long as it is the domestic transactions that we do. You have a wallet-based system which is easy to use, and you post all the entries into the wallet, and then you fund the wallet at the end of the day, and the payment happens, and knocking off from the vendor happens from the system. So the key thing is that it's bank agnostic. It's an end-to-end process that is there. Checks and balances are there from a GST perspective, which is very relevant, and it integrates with the ERP well. And we have seen that for a size of company like us, it's close to about 14,000 crore. And for all the domestic payments that we do here in APAR, it's able to address various solutions that we had. And I'm sure it really will help many of the industries to have their solutions on this particular platform.
That's interesting, and thanks for sharing that. Ramesh, when it came to sort of implementing, digitization initiatives at APAR, right? And I want to get a little more tactical here to, for the benefit of the, finance community here. What are some of the practical tips that you can share with, folks here attending on when it comes to implementing some of these digital initiatives? What should they keep in mind? How should they evaluate? What are some of the, there is often talk of business case as well, right? So would love to hear your perspective on how did you think about implementation of initiatives for the AP function?
Yeah, so we have 3 divisions within APAR Industries, and once we felt that there is a need for automation of this particular AP function, we got the best team within each division who actually handle this payment. From the lowest level, the people who are there in the system who have been handling the payments, we got them together and made them actually see the demo with the cash flow, so that they actually understand the benefits of that. So unless we get their buy-in, it's very difficult to implement some of these initiatives. We made them go through the blueprint, do the extensive testing over there, and the teams were hands-on right from day one of this particular project. And I would also like to give credit to CashFlo team to manage the domestic payments for a company as big as our size. I would say that there was top level involvement both from CashFlo and as well as from APAR. I personally took the initiative to drive some of these projects, which is very important. So once you have the team buy-in, it's also important that there is a top level focus is also there. And certain things that we do, it really helped. Like we used to have these weekly calls just to review it. Just used about 15 to 20 minutes every week. But that weekly call really helped to address where the points are stuck, how to take it forward, what should be the plan for this week, etc. That actually helped us to ease out this implementation process. As I said, our company is a big size, and therefore there are multiple requirements and multiple combinations and combinations which are possible. We were able to address most of that with CashFlo in terms of the solutions. In some of the areas where I felt that the things are stretching a lot, we just bifurcated that in phase 1 and phase 2, tackle the low-hanging fruits in phase 1, gone live with some of the divisions so that people really see the benefits already today. And some of the very complicated areas we parked it for phase 2 that will happen at points of time. So a lot of these things got thing, and we are currently able to digitize, if I'm not wrong, close to about 50 to 60% of our domestic payments already as we speak. And that number we are likely to move to about 80 to 90% maybe in the next 2 weeks or so. With that, at least the most of the domestic payments will get automated in this particular platform. So I think the key point that made it successful were top level involvement right from day one, both from APAR and from CashFlo. Complete buy-in of the team for actually handling the processes really helped. Weekly cadences to review the progress of this thing. And these are the few disciplines, if you do, and really you are able to see success of this thing over a period of time.
Right. And as far as, driving adoption within your team is concerned, or the change management that was required, were there any, often with large implementations, those can be relevant, key challenges. How do you change behavior on ground? How do you get people to change how they operate? Any tips for finance leaders on how should they think about change management?
I think the key thing is for people to themselves see the solutions which are there. I think once they are able to see that, we can it will not be difficult to change behavior. As I said, people are used to working in a particular manner, and people want to change. It's just that at senior level, you need to bring the solutions to the right set of people, and help them lead the process by able to demonstrate them what are the benefits of the system. As leaders, we are not expected to do the ground level work over there, but try to bring the right partners to the right audience, and see that how the progress and the monitoring of mechanism really happens. So my think what I've seen is that initially you always find resistance over there. People don't want to change things. People will bring up with multiple problems that okay, this is we are doing in a particular way. Every company feels that their problems are unique, but then when you look at the broader horizon, you find that now the grass is everybody's on the same boat. So that's where, and it's also important to find the right partner so that to be able to address all the solutions. So it's very important that this match is done. And once people are seeing that things are getting solutions are forthcoming with the way things are progressing, things really get progressed to that level, which is what we have seen in CashFlo over the last 1 year. From the time the project started, initial hiccups were there, initial resistance were there, and the people coming with a list of issues and problems are all good. And when we saw that solutions are getting addressed point by point, people are were able to hang on to the solution.
Yeah.
So it's a journey, I would say. It's each automation project is a journey. Each has to be respected. Each has to be nurtured, and then you will really see light at the end of the tunnel.
That's a great point. Before we open it up for Q&A, one final question, Ramesh, from my end is, if you fast forward, let's say 6 months to a year from now, what is the ideal AP process that you would envisage for APAR? Right, we've obviously automated some parts of it, but what is your vision for, what's the ideal AP process that you would want to put in place?
So as I said, we have digitized one part of the AP, which is this payment and the most critical part of it. But there is, a step before this and there's a step after that. So how the 6 months down the line, if you ask me, I would like to digitize the entire AP process, right from the time the invoice comes. Of course, I'm assuming that your SAP checks are in place for all the goods and the PO and everything. But right from the time the processing to the payment, of course, is done, and then again coming back to your regulatory checks and your post-vendor reconciliations, possibly even vendor portal at some point of time. End-to-end linkage of AP is what now would be in my next wish list.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ramesh. That's been super insightful. I hope the audience found this insightful as well. With that, I'll pause here and maybe open it up for Q&A. I think we have about 15 minutes or so. Akshay, how do you suggest we take it up?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions that have come in the Q&A section and then on the chat as well. So let's just go through them one by one maybe, and the ones who've sent the questions on the chat side, I'll loop them in, right? I'll unmute them so maybe they can ask the question as well. So the first question that we've got is more like it says, they understand that automation can greatly improve workflows and day-to-day operations for the team. But can you tell me how it's benefited you as the CFO? What are the key strategic benefits that you see coming in with automation?
I think one thing is that you can be rest assured that the backend controls are in place. Even earlier it was there, but now once you have a digitized thing, there is no room for error. Think about issues like you have a set of people who currently are able to do your all your work, be able to ensure that the payments are happening properly. Imagine one of them leaves the organization. There's a new team that is coming. Or imagine that somebody has gone for a leave for a long period of time and there's a temporary people coming. You don't want to be in a tense moment that is that payment process is happening, properly or not? Is the checks and balances happening? Are the controls are in place properly? That's worry you don't need, and you don't even want your subordinate teams also to worry about it. It's not only about me. It's that one level below me. You don't even want them to spend time on areas where they need to check continuously whether the payments are happening properly or the accounts are getting scrutinized properly or not. You want a watertight system, which no matter whoever is there in the system, people come, people go, there's changing people who are there. You just want to ensure that you and your level below them are able to sleep peacefully. So it's not going. We should not want something which is people based. We want something that's going to be system based. That's the key benefit that we as leaders, me personally, I've got it out of this implementation.
Got it. Thank you, Ramesh. I also have Mr. Ankur Jain here, who's asked a question. Ankur, I've given you the permission to unmute and ask your question yourself. If you'd like to do that, please go ahead.
Hi Ramesh, hi Ankur. Thank you for this session. So during the discussion, you pointed out something on GST input reconciliation, where you mentioned that rather than we doing a post-mortem or something after a month or maybe a quarterly reconciliation, we can also, before making payment also, we can do a check. So maybe can you throw some light on it? How actually we do and what kind of solution you have, Ankur?
Sure. Maybe I can take that, and Ramesh, please feel free to chime in. So, Ankur, the way we look at this is, so there are two things. One is with e-invoicing, coming in, and now it's been extended to companies as low as 5 crores in turnover. The vendors, whenever they send their invoice to the buyer, it has to be uploaded on the e-invoicing portal, which is synced with the GST portal. So increasingly, buyers will start getting a more real-time view of whether their vendors are, whether their vendor invoices are being booked on the GST portal or not. That's point one. Point two, even where credit periods are small, or let's say it is not reflecting on the GST portal, what we've seen customers do is that they look at the vendor's past, filing history and GST payment history, as much as, let's say, past 6 months or even beyond. And if they find, so on our platform, they can actually quickly check, okay, this vendor has been 100% compliant, another vendor has been, let's say, 60% compliant, so on and so forth. And based on their past track record, so what customers do is they hold back the GST portion of the invoice and make the remaining payment. So let's say on a 100 rupee invoice, they will, if it's a 18% GST, they'll hold back the 18%, which is a simple, it's a toggle switch, on the payments dashboard, and only the balance amount is then paid to the vendor. That 18% is maintained as pending balance. The moment the vendor files the GST subsequently, that balance amount is released. So what it does is effectively it gives the buyer a little more assurance that they will not be out of pocket tomorrow in case the vendor doesn't file for or vendor doesn't pay their GST. So those are a couple of ways in which companies are doing that. Ramesh, please feel free to elaborate on this. It's an important point, Ankur. Thanks for raising it.
No, absolutely. As you said, so it already gives a screen. So at the time of the payment, it actually prompts you that this vendor is not achieved on this compliance, which is a very critical check we need to do before making the payment. And this software does all the background checks and helps us to give a message so that it really helps you to stop your payment and at least to the extent of GST payment, you don't make that payment. So you're not out of the money, as Ankur said. So precisely that's something was a very important thing that we wanted to implement. So that it's not restricted to payments being handled by a different set of people and somebody else checking the GST, and then the communication comes from the GST team to the payment team. This is completely integrated in this solution.
Yeah. Ankur, I think we can also arrange a demo for you afterwards, right? Our team will be in touch, so they can show you how the platform operates as well. But thank you so much for your question at the time. Okay, the next question is from Mr. Somesh Sharma. He says that he wants to understand the AP payment process, right? Let me just unmute him actually if he's willing to sort of ask the question himself. He can come in and unmute himself and ask the question.
Hello.
Mr. Smesh, yes.
Good morning, Ramesh sir and Ankur. Just wanted to understand how exactly the flow of processes happens while you process the automated payment daily, and also what sort of process are you looking for while doing the accounting of AP invoices? I mean, what sort of automation exactly you are seeking at?
Yes, so I think this system digitizes what we have currently implemented is on the payment part. As I said, this is one part of all the solution that is there, and it actually picks up the data directly from SAP, and sits on this portal, and from there we can just select which of the invoices we want to pay. So from the due date basis, it already populates those vendors, and then it pushes the amount to be paid to a wallet system, completely paperless. And we just need to fund the wallet, and then the payment happens automatically from the wallet. And once the payment is done, your payment advices are released automatically to your vendors, and that payment circles back to the SAP and knocks off the vendor from the system. So the entry of vendor payment happens automatically into the system. So that's the thing that in terms of the process it happens. Of course, the GST checks are there, which I won't repeat again. But that's the end-to-end process that currently happens.
Yeah. And just to add to that, as Ramesh was mentioning earlier, these implementations have to be thought about in phases. And for APAR, fixing their payments process was the most critical at the time. So that's the phase we started with. Over time, APAR would also want to eventually automate their end-to-end AP process, but it has to be a phase-wise journey. So that's how APAR is looking at it.
Mr. Somesh, thank you so much for your question. Do you want to ask a follow-up here? Need to know the authorization controls. Yeah. You can unmute yourself and ask.
Sure, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand what level of authorization controls are being there for automated payment processes. Is it at the bank control level or only at the SAP level?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, and this is something that is always there at the back of our mind, and also when we implement it, we wanted to ensure that the controls that we have in place in terms of authorization, maker, checker is also inbuilt into this platform, and the solution actually gave precisely as what we are doing currently. So there's a maker, there's a checker. It goes to 1-2 levels before getting paid. If there are some changes also that needs to be done in the bank account or in your vendor payments, etc., the changes has to be done first in SAP, and then it is getting pushed to CashFlow. So there's nothing that can be done in the CashFlow solution directly. And what we also went through is that we asked our internal audit team to verify the processes, and I know they had given some a list of issues that needs to be corrected, and now we got it corrected. So the CashFlow solution were able to correct those areas where we found that some controls could be there. So authorization limits, it can be set up. You can set up maker checker things in the system, and you can replicate the current process that you're doing manually into this digitized solution.
Thank you, Ramesh. Mr. Somesh, again, I think we can again get the team to be in touch with you and give you a more detailed demo, right, of how each feature works. Let me set that up after the webinar. Thank you so much for your question. The next question is from Mr. Anand Prakash. Just 1 second. I'm going to again unmute him, and then he can maybe ask his question himself. Mr. Anand, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Maybe I'll ask the question. But Mr. Anand Prakash asked, how early should a company think about automation? He says that they are currently a 250 crore turnover company and not sure what is the right time for them.
I think the earlier the better, because you never know when you cross 250 to 500, and and then become a big company. And 250 is not a small company as well. But I would say that even smaller companies need to look at this, because what happens is that the controls and processes that we build from an automated solution helps. It doesn't depend on whether you're small, big, medium, or big company. It is actually the processes. You may want to pick and choose which ones you want to do. And especially things like things that involve money will always be critical on top of it. So that's something that will be always on top of it, and it really doesn't depend on what size of the business you are in. These are the processes which are true for a small size company, medium size company, as well as large size company. So I would put it that way. Anything that involves money should always be on the top of your agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to just add there, in our experience working with customers in the market, what we've seen is that companies as small as 50 to 100 crores are also digitizing their AP function. And the primary reason for it is, like Ramesh pointed out, these are growing companies. And when you are growing, there's a lot of stress that comes on daily, weekly vendor payments. And automating that process becomes a high priority from a risk management perspective, more than just productivity improvement. So really, there is no time as such that a company needs to wait until to be implementing this. I think it's a matter of hygiene at this point in time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for your question as well. Mr. Suresh Kumar has his hand up. I'm just going to unmute him and see if there's a question coming from there. Mr. Suresh, you can unmute yourself and ask your question if you have one right now.
Hi, Ankur, and hi, Ramesh. Am I audible?
Yes.
It was by mistake, probably.
Okay, no worries. That's okay, that's fine. The next question actually comes from Mr. Munesh Bhatt. Again, I'm just going to unmute him so that he can ask the question himself. I think quite an important question. Mr. Munesh, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Just want to check, you see, what has been explained so far is most of it is available in SAP. What is the exact value add of CashFlo? If you can just cite a few top three kind of a value add, which are the key, which differentiates SAP with CashFlo, which can really give kind of a contribution or the value add to the organization. It'll be helpful, because so far I understand SAP has authorization, SAP has the workflow, SAP has the automated payment process. So where is the real advantage of this? You can just give that. Thank you.
Sure. Ramesh, should I take this or do you want to take this?
You can take this.
So Munesh, thanks for the question. And this is something that we hear and we get asked all the time. I think two, three areas, right? First of all, in order to do payment reconciliations, and I'm only focusing on the payment processing right now, there is obviously a lot of value add on the AP invoice capture and invoice booking, which I will not get into, for the sake of time. But just even on the payments side of it, today, if a company is on SAP, right, what would happen typically is that they would, let's say they release the payment. Post payment release, they would have to go to their bank, download the bank statement, look at the reference number or UTR, and go and update that in their ERP. They would also separately then send the vendors a payment advice, which typically again would have to be done at a vendor by vendor level, explaining all the adjustments or deductions that have been made. Right now, these processes, fundamentally, SAP is in this case, the accounting system per se, but it cannot do the reconciliation on its own, right? It needs to either talk to a bank to be able to do the reconciliation. Or in our case, we sit on top of SAP, right? So we integrate with SAP at the back. And, especially in case of APAR, where they had multiple banks that they were working with, integrating with all the banks was just practically not possible. So, what the biggest value add, just from the payment side of it has been automated reconciliations, where once the payment has been made, it is automatically posted back into the ERP. Second is, vendor intimation and vendor communication. That again, at the scale of APAR is massive. So that has been entirely automated. And, the intimation is also not just a plain vanilla bank payment advice that goes. It is a very detailed and customized payment advice that APAR has created so that their vendors don't come back with queries and, create, load on the payment teams. And the third big value add is on the GST check, right? Now, if a company wants to check whether the vendor is compliant and has been paying their GST invoices, SAP doesn't enable that by default. You do need a solution on top of SAP to do that check. And in our case, that check actually happens prior to payment. So that is, again, it helps the company save on potential input tax losses. So I would say those are the three big value adds as far as the payment processing is concerned. Of course, at the time of invoice booking, the system actually allows the companies to capture the PDF invoice directly from their email inbox and populate the entries on the dashboard in an through advanced AI and OCR. So that again is something that typically SAP doesn't do. Workflows, interestingly, what we have seen from what customers have pointed out is that SAP has, they can configure workflows for invoice booking, maker checkers, but for payments, which is after booking the invoice, typically the workflow, that SAP allows for is a bit limiting in its form. So, at APAR, we've actually created a matrix of workflows depending on the type of vendor, the business unit, the ticket size. For all those parameters, there are different workflows that have been configured, different approval metrics that have been built. And that kind of flexibility, the ERP wasn't enabling earlier. So on the face of it, yes, approvals exist, but the level of complexity that SAP can handle, especially for payment approvals, in our experience has been limited. Ramesh, please feel free to add if you have any thoughts.
I think you covered, everything well, Ankur. I think these were the key things that we also noted. And for us, I think one thing that stand out is dealing with multiple banks. We have 8 to 10 banks to deal with, and linking this SAP to each and every bank was a thing. Whereas this solution is doesn't depend on what bank it is there. So that was one of the key things that
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Munesh. I have an anonymous attendee actually who's asked, can you show how this works? Can we get a demo? I'm happy to provide a demo after the webinar. Our team can be in touch with you. All you need to do is just maybe send me a message on the chat here, right? Identifying yourself. If you can share your email ID or your name or your phone number, then I'll get that set up, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is we have Mr. Vijay Kini from Coromandel SSC, and he has 2 questions. So let me just unmute him. And I think that's the final 2 questions that we have. Just one second. Just a second. Yeah, Mr. Vijay Kini, I've given you, you can just unmute yourself and ask your question directly.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, and thanks, Ramesh and Ankur, for this insightful session. I had a couple of questions. See, I had the shared services for Coromandel, based out of Vizag. We run the accounts payable function here. So the questions I had was, one, what is a good OCR tool or an engine to use? We have the workflow functionality, which is inbuilt into our SAP S/4HANA. And my second question is, MSME being another tricky point over the last few years with the Udyam registration of all of that. How are MSME payments being automated?
I think I can talk about the second point. Maybe Ankur, you can talk the first thing. I think MSME payments are also enabled in this software, and now we just need to identify that MSME payments from SAP, and there's a tick that goes on the cash flow. Once it's identified, then it ensures that all this credit period for that and the payment happens within the 45 days stipulated period as per the regulations. So we've seen that happening seamlessly for the MSME payments.
Yeah.
You may want to take up the first question.
Sure. Yeah, before I answer that, Vijay, the other thing as far as MSME compliance is concerned is that, so two things. One is, prior to the due date for MSME payments, there is a notification that goes out via email and even on the platform to the concerned stakeholders. You can configure it, let's say 3 days prior, 5 days prior, informing that a certain amount of MSME payments are coming up so that they can arrange for liquidity accordingly. So that's a nifty functionality that is available. The other is, of course, there is a piece around making vendor payments through vendor financing prior to due date, and then extending your own payables, which again, as a platform, we enable through our network of lenders, but not something that we're doing currently here at APAR. But that's another way for you to handle MSME compliance. Happy to connect offline on that particular point. On the OCR piece, Vijay, there are multiple OCR solutions in the market. I think the way to think about OCR, frankly, is actually doing some POCs. See, it all boils down to the field level accuracy that you're able to achieve as far as invoice capture is concerned, and part of at least what we do here at CashFlo is we train the models on each company's vendor invoices. It's typically a week's activity or so, so that typically you'll see in the market OCR accuracy ranges from 60 to 75%. In our experience, we've gone up to as high as 95% once we've trained these models, right? And then it's a self-learning process subsequently. So we've leveraged the best of generative AI, from the recent developments and layered that onto the invoice capture process to deliver that kind of accuracy. The other thing to keep in mind as far as OCR solutions is one is just invoice capture, but I mean the OCR itself. But the other is how do you capture the invoices? Right now, there are two ways. Either somebody in your team is sitting and uploading those invoices on an OCR platform, then the platform reads it. The other way, and this is something that, again, we believe is the right way to do it, is can the solution pick up the invoices automatically from the vendor email itself, right? So whenever the vendor sends across the invoice to the buyer, the system should ideally be capable of picking up the relevant email, picking up the relevant PDFs, and then scanning it and populating it on the platform. So I think that's a part that typically gets missed as far as OCR is concerned. But these would be some key considerations that I can share. Happy to elaborate more. Or Ramesh, if you have any thoughts, please feel free.
Yeah, no, I think again here, right? Like maybe we can arrange for a demo after the webinar, which specifically focuses on the capabilities of our AI-powered OCR system for liability booking, and that maybe gives more insights to Mr. Kinney as well.
Pretty much.
I think. Yeah. Super. Thank you so much for your question, Mr. Kinney. And I think that's all for today. I think we've covered all the questions that came our way. Thank you so much, Ramesh, and thank you so much, Ankur. I think it's been a great session. Just being mindful of everyone's time as well. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I'll share our email as well as our contact details in an email after the webinar. So you can always reach out to us with more questions, even for Ramesh, even for Ankur, and we'll be sure to like get them answered via the respective people and come back to you. But thank you so much, Ramesh, and thank you, Ankur, for your time. I think it's been fantastic catching up for an hour and talking finance automation. And hopefully we can do this again soon in the coming months again. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone. Yep. Bye-bye.